Hi everyone, and welcome to a new edition of Let's Build. This is a collection of tutorials and how-tos using the Neverwinter Nights 2 toolset. So here is our sea cave, looking lovely, and in this episode we're going to work mainly on final details and optimizing the walk mesh, that's the walkable space for the player in this area. So just to recap, we got our lighting all sorted out, and we had a little run around in game as well, and it was almost all looking just about how we wanted it. And we had this little campfire for a little bit of interaction that will be going on in the area, which we're going to come to very soon. We'll start with the walk mesh for now. We can always place extra details in later, and that is something I tend to do when I am making areas anyway, is that myself or Sophie, who makes other areas with me, will make the general appearance of the area what we definitely want in, and then what we'll do is we can revisit later as we're putting the actual content and story of the game in, and we'll add further details in at that point. So we'll actually do full details another time, so what we'll do is we'll go straight to the mesh. So at the minute, if I click on surface mesh and baked, this is what we have. So the green areas, remember, are the walkable space for the player and other creatures, and anything inside sort of white or yellow grids is unwalkable, so sort of grey lines mean you can't go there. So at the minute it's not actually that bad. We have a bit of a narrow passage just here, which we're going to have to widen, because I think that's going to prove quite problematic, and the rest is generally alright actually. It's not really a problem. So to optimize areas, you may find that if you're packing a lot of placeable objects onto a tile, it may result in the tile being completely unwalkable. So what would happen is, say this tile here for instance might just be completely boxed off with a white line running across there and all of this being unwalkable, but we kind of got away with it with this because I guess we put everything in the right place. I believe it's something to do with the amount of triangles, the green triangles in these grids. I think if so many of them are missing, or I'm not entirely sure, but I think if you've just got a huge concentration of placeables, it does cause a bit of a problem. So if you're getting big green boxes, sorry, big white sort of white out boxes in your areas, it probably means you need to either cut down on the placeables or do what we're about to do, and that is convert some placeables to environment objects and use a walk mesh cutter. And that's what we're going to do here to widen the player's access through here, because we've got these two little stones here, maybe three, that in my opinion don't really need to be blocking the mesh, because if I turn this off, I think the player can walk over those quite easily. It's a general rule I tend to use as well when doing meshes, is that you know, as long as you know they're no higher than the top of the foot, you can normally get away with just letting the player walk over them. Let me just have a look here. Campaign objects. Let me have a look. Get a creature out. Someone we know, someone familiar. Crispin, come here. Crispin's always helping me out with things like this. We'll get him down here. Players of our module series should know this fellow quite well. And as you can see, it's not really going to be much of a problem for the rock just to cover his foot ever so slightly. So that's all fine. So we're going to bye Crispin. We're going to do a little bit of a change here. So this is how you convert placeables to environment objects. Now environment objects they look like placeables, you know, you can still manipulate them in exactly the same way, but when a player reaches a placeable object, that you can essentially walk through it. It has no collision, the mesh doesn't bake around it, and it also uses less processing power, you know, rendering resources. So it is, in a way, it is good for the engine. but it doesn't make a huge impact. So don't get obsessed with environmenting everything. Though I understand some modders, and even myself at times, that do tend to just convert anything that doesn't need to be interacted with to environment, but that's not strictly needed. So to convert to an environment object, you click on your placeable. This might be a challenge with these trees down, so I'm going to hide the trees. Click on your placeable, which just make sure it's on the Rossi Mox. Yes, Rossi Mox, Mossy Rocks. Can't get my worms out. Now then, let's see. Right click once you've got the placeable selected, and then convert placeables to environment objects. And as you can see grayed out in the box there, it says environment objects to placeable, so you can switch back if you need to. However, there is something I should tell you if you do that. In fact, we'll do that as we're doing this. So placeables to environment objects, and it'll tell you one placeable is converted. Hooray. Right. So what will happen now is you'll notice in the properties panel, if I click on the mossy rocks, got it that time, there's a lot less properties available as well. So that's another thing with environment objects. Once you've turned something into an environment object, it cannot be interacted with in-game in any way. So that means it cannot be selected, it can't have an inventory, you can't run scripts off it, that kind of thing, and you can't give it a collision box either. So that is something to bear in mind. So that's all set up fine there. And what you'll notice now is, if I go to baked, so yeah, our previous bake showed that it cut the mesh around these rocks, which was causing a bit of a awkward movement through there for the player. I mean, you may remember in my video last video when we ran around the area in game, and I struggled a little bit too. So we're going to bake again now, and I'll show you what's happened. Nearly done. Sip my coffee while I'm waiting here. Oh, that needs to get a bit smaller. I was verifying some scripts earlier. So anyway, right, here we go. That's a lot better. As you can see now, we have green grid going right through the center there, but we still have some bits that are a bit too narrow for my liking there. See, we've got another rock there, but that's kind of sitting in the area of another larger rock, which is why we're getting this sort of narrowing going on here. And again here as well, we could probably widen this too, and I'm going to show you how to do that in a moment. But first, I'm going to do what I said I was going to do, and that is try to convert the mossy rocks back to placeables, because something will happen when I do this, and it's worth noting. So got them selected, and I'm going to convert an environment object to placeable. Okay, so it's done that. Now the first thing you'll notice is the faction has changed. That's not such a big deal. It says player. You could probably just leave that as it is, but generally placeables are in the hostile faction. And further down, right to the bottom, you need to go to statistics, and you'll notice that all these figures here, in particular hit points and current hit points, are now 0. That is a problem, because if it was a creature, for example, it would be dead. I suppose on someone who had no health, it would just be dead. Now with a placeable, what would happen is it would behave like an environment object in many ways. However, if say this was a let's pretend that you had a chest on the ground, and a chest, normally you'd have them usable, they'd have inventories in them and things like that. But say your chest was initially it was an environment object, it was just there for eye candy, but you decided you wanted this chest to be usable, and have inventory in it, and you want the player to be able to open it and such. Now if you just converted that chest to from environment to placeable like we've just done here, and then put the inventory in it and then loaded up your game, what would happen is the player would be able to do anything with it whatsoever. It would be selectable but you wouldn't be able to interact with it in any way whatsoever, because it would effectively be a dead or destroyed object, yet it would still be rendering in the game, if that makes sense. So it's a good practice with your placeables. Anything you're converting from environment back to placeable, make sure it has some hit points available. I always just put 10 in, because I mean it's not going to get damaged or anything anyway, but yeah, there we go. So that sorts out hardness and fortitude. Don't worry about those, they're fine. But have some health on your whatever objects you change around. However, it's not essential for this because we want it to be environment objects, and there we go. So that's step one. That is how you create an environment object. Now you must think it's going to take ages to sort all the environment objects out in here, a long time. However, it won't. I have a faster way to show you very shortly. But next we're going to move on to the walk mesh cutter, which would actually incorporate multiple environment objects. So yes, I think I can cover them both at the same time. Now then, we want to widen this passage. So what we're going to do is, to start with, we are going to select a placeable. We'll start there, and then hold down Shift, and then select the placeables that you want to manipulate, just like so. I think that got all of them there. So there's those, but then we want some on this side as well. So once again, keep your Shift key down and select the placeables again. Now obviously in hindsight, because I don't want to overload the initial videos, you can just do this as you're building. Once you place a placeable down and you're sure of what its of its location and what it's there for, you can just do this as you go along. That's absolutely fine. That was more me just trying to make this as viewer friendly as possible, but I mean indeed I normally do these things as I go along, because it does save you a lot of tinkering about later. So I've selected a good bunch of placeables there, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to, just as like before, convert. As there's 9 placeables were converted. So we could a trigger, so blueprints tab, triggers, get off those, and we're going to go to empty. Some of these other ones are my own resources on here, so don't worry, your list will probably be about half the size of this. So empty, and then look for the walk mesh cutter. And with this we need to mark where we want the mesh to be cut out. So we need to surround the unwalkable area with the trigger. So placing triggers in Neverwinter 2 is very straightforward. You initially have this plus sort of marker here, or crosshair, whatever you want to call it. So make sure you've clicked on walk mesh cutter and click the first point where you want to draw the trigger from, and ideally for a walk mesh cutter it should be just nestled inside an unwalkable space to start with. So I've clicked it there, and then you need to click on the next point you want it to travel to. So in terms of getting the maximum walkable space for the player, I'm going to click just here, and then we'll click just here, and here to here to here. I always try and hug the placeables quite tightly with these. I don't. That way we can give the player a reasonable amount of crossover just on the edges of some of these placeables. You know, it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect, as long as you cut out any big sort of height differences, things like that. So we have these twigs here which we have converted. So we're just going to draw around those and bring this cutter in around here to the back. And as you can see, there's a blue line here. It gradually sort of molds into shape as you're going, and there we go, this flexes round to the point where you started. Once you're done, because you need to obviously let the system know that you've finished, because the plus thing's still there, the trigger's done. Best thing to do in that situation is either click on one of the tabs at the top to get out of it, or just do what I do and just click on Warp Mesh Cutter again, and then you can go off to do your next one. That one's done, and you don't have to do anything with the trigger itself then. That's all sorted out. So with this side here again, we just need to do the same thing. We'll start in this unwalkable space just here, and then just click across to get what you want. We're going to ignore that rock there, we're just going to leave that one be. It's very, very low to the ground. Along here, up to there, bring it round. Doesn't matter where we put it here because the player can't get back there anyway. Okay, and then we'll do a bake again, and we should have a good looking shape, or it might look worse. There's always a chance, but we'll see. Come on. Yes, it came out fine. So we now have a clear passage to the back of the area now. We have no other sort of tight sort of choke points either really. We could probably do a job there with that one. And the entrance is fine as well, which is good. Sometimes I have a bit of trouble with these placeable cave entrances, but not today, I'm pleased to see. Excellent. So based on that, and with the efficiency for the engines, if I could convert all this into environment objects if I wanted to, and to be fair, I probably will. There are some other considerations to make if you're of the mind, oh, I'll just convert every unnecessary sort of placeable to environment, and that is first one. Placeable objects actually block line of sight if they're obviously large enough to do so. They can block line of sight. Environment objects do not block line of sight. Secondly, an environment object is not recognized by the camera. To explain that better, so if I actually had a placeable object wall here, say these walls were all, are actually all placeable objects, as a lot of them are, the camera in game won't sort of move into them, so to speak. It will kind of stay off them. If it's an environment object, it will kind of the camera will just swing through placeables, and it can cause some funny camera positioning for the player, particularly if they're just entering an area. Another thing as well with placeable objects as well is they can, environment objects rather, is that they can fade when the camera hovers over them, which may not give you the result you want. So they might hide, say, something that you might want to be hidden from the player unless the player is to discover it by some means. So it might inadvertently reveal hidden events, hidden secret areas, things like that. So while it's perfectly valid to environment up anything that's not being interacted with, you might just want to be mindful of that. But like I said, either way, it's generally fine as long as the warp mesh is not too sort of tight. You've got to think about what's going on in your area really. Is it a combat area or not? This area, I would say no, as there's no major combat expected in this area. If there is any, it'll be extremely small. So I don't really have a problem leaving some of these as placeables in this area. Say for a little bit of tidying up. So here we'll revisit what we did earlier. Can I select it? Yes, the mossy rocks. See, I'm trying so hard to pronounce that properly. That's my little slip up earlier. I was initially recording these videos in sort of 5 minutes takes and just putting them together, but I've actually now I've got kind of used to it. This is all generally it's a single take. I've kind of I prefer it that way as well. It's the videos seem to be a bit more informative and a bit more interesting if it was just me with a rough plan of what I'm doing, and then it's actually easier for me when I'm actually using the tool set as well. I tend to be thinking of it better, a bit more clearly, rather than, oh, my take's nearly finished, I'll just get on with it now. So we converted that, and we'll do another bake. I'll swig my caffeine and we'll see what we get. As a note for people who play the Intra-Theme Prince and the Umbrella Abyss, our Neverwinter Nights 2 single-player series, the update for Umbrella Abyss was released today. That puts up to version 2. That contains quite a long list of fixes and improvements, and the odd addition to a lot of issues that were reported. I mean, I was pleased that there weren't an awful lot of potential game breakers overall. But yeah, the package today it adds a lot more and tidies up a lot of it as well. So I hope those of you who've finished the game already or are looking to play it to start with, go grab it and have fun. It certainly appears to be over 60 hours worth of stuff in there, which is it's massive. But yeah, more on those campaigns in the commentary series, which will be kicking back off soon. I just got to bring my character through again in version 2.0, just because I want to show some of the changes we did in that. But that's enough. Back to building. Now then, we have that mesh closed off there. We have something that looks a bit funny, doesn't it? So I like the players to be able to have as much exploration room as possible, just because the way I generally approach building is the style of the games that Sophie and I make is we like encouraging exploration. So even if it's just allowing you to walk an extra nanometer across the area, we will do it. Ground twigs, let's cut them back and get a cutter in there, and they're only twigs, so let's not get too carried away about whether the player can walk through some twigs or not. There we go. And in doing so, we might as well make this boat an environment object now for doing that. I'm sure half this video has consisted of me baking things, but sorry about that. But you'll find that you'll be back and forth as you're sort of perfecting pieces of your walkable areas and things. All done, right, and that's better. Just a little bit more room there. It's never a bad thing. Okay, that is the mesh done for the time being. I don't see any need to do any more with that. So that brings to an end our series of episodes on the basics of creating an interior area. We will obviously revisit interiors and some more of the finer points of building them as we go along, or if I get any particular requests for them, because this was very small, very straightforward, so I'm sure perhaps a larger project might be of interest to others. The next episode 7 onwards, we'll start by looking at getting in a creature, so creature creation and placement and some of the properties and fine tuning you can do for those. That's probably going to take up a good episode, I think, and then from that we can look at things like conversations and other interesting things as well. So I'll leave it here for now. It was a short but sweet episode, but hopefully you got something useful out of it, and I'll see you all in the next one. So take care and see you very soon.